Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery preparing to check those 3 yellow buckets down there on the floor. The yellow buckets with the European nightcrawlers living in them. And as luck would have it, we've got a color coordinated meal for them. So these 3 bins are going to be receiving these 3 banana peels. It's been 12 days now since the last check-in on these little guys. The bins have been in service for 130 days. And after a 12-day pause since the most recent check-in, I believe they're probably ready for a little snack. So I'm going to slip on a glove, get these systems up on the bench, and we're going to get them fit. So let's get to work. During our last check-in 12 days ago, we came in, found top covering newspapers that were in such good shape that we were able to use them over again. And it was my assumption that after this much time, they would probably be gone for the most part, and that is true about the top covering newspaper. Totally shredded, well, not totally, but definitely torn into little pieces. But the coffee filter that was placed in here as the so-called feeding zone indicator seems to be holding out, and I am definitely curious to see if that's going to be consistent throughout all 3 systems. I'll just assume that it is, and we'll just go ahead and reuse them as feeding zone indicators. Now, during the last check-in, we were pretty generous with my prepared bedding, this shredded paper cardboard mix. And the main ingredient is basically shredded paper and cardboard. Stuff that comes out of my shredder looks just like this, totally dry. And then what my prepared bedding is a mix of that stuff plus moisture and little tiny leaf fragments. So that's really the only distinction. In this case, we're giving them a bedding that's just going to be made up of the stuff that comes straight out of my shredder, stuff I just showed you a moment ago. And I thought that I would deploy it in a way that I've done in a couple other systems. In a couple other systems, I just sort of left like a little pool, like a little recess in the middle into which the bedding went in as sort of a top coating, onto which the top covering paper and plastic went. And just on that topic, I do have replacement top covering newspapers for all these systems. So whether or not the top coverings in the other systems held up good or not, we're just going to be reusing them all. The one in here definitely got shredded and would have required replacement or at least retirement. We may or may not find similar results in the other systems, but you know, that's the whole thing with these systems. They're all always being fed at the same time, at the same intervals, the same amounts. Systems were thought to have been launched with pretty much the same number of worms, and consistency has probably been one of the things that you can, for the most part, count on in these types of systems. So one of the things that I'm usually on the lookout for is just anything that stands out different, you know, from all the others. And in most cases, we just find ourselves encountering systems that are pretty much alike in almost every way. So these corncob bits have now been in the bins for 92 days. I saw that on my spreadsheet the other day. These corncobs are a little bit different because they were soaked for many weeks, just sitting in water before they were eventually fed to the worms, thinking that perhaps corncob, if it was treated that way, you know, soaked for an extended period of time, that the fibers or the material, whatever, would become looser, softer, whatever, easier for the worms to eat is the bottom line, possibly making the breakdown process occur more quickly, happen in less time. So 92 days, I really don't have anything to compare it to, though. That's the thing, you know. I never really took the time to note how much time had passed between feedings. I mean, between the feeding of banana peels and the eventual, what am I talking about? Banana peels. I'm distracting myself by what I'm getting. Corn cobs. So I've never really had any sort of way to say for sure that it takes a certain specific amount of time for corn cobs to go in a worm bin. But well, at least we'll have some sort of a point of reference here. I think that this is actually the corn cob that I leaned on a little bit last week, or 12 days ago when we last checked in, and I even made note of the fact that that thing was on the verge of breaking, not because it had gotten to that point on its own, but mainly because of me being a little bit overly rough with it. So that sort of is what I'm trying to avoid in most cases. And like I said, I'm going to be just piling the bedding on pretty thick and a little bit of a layer on top. But down here by the foods, I figured let's drop in a little bit. And since it's going in dry, we can always grab my squirt bottle and add moisture to this dry material. And that was my plan too, is to put the shredded paper cardboard on top and then give it a nice soaking. So let's submerge the feeding, but then down here in the middle in a hole that's hopefully, ideally, smaller than that piece of plastic that we're covering up with. Use that as sort of the landing pad for our little cushion of shredded paper and cardboard just sitting there on top for them to hang out in if they like it. I think since it'll be covered with plastic, the moisture in the system will recirculate and keep that nice and damp. But just to play it safe, since, like I said before, it's going in dry, it makes a lot of sense to dampen it a lot before we cut the worms loose. And I was even wondering if perhaps that top covering of newspaper that we're putting in dry, would it benefit the system for us to dampen that too? I mean, we normally don't, but I have done it here and there. It's just, I normally don't bother. But I think what we could do, since we're pretty generous with the water right there, and the bedding material, is the top covering can just go in dry, and we'll leave it at that. How does that sound? Oh, you know what? Guess what? We forgot to mark where we fed with our surviving feeding zone indicator. Wonder how the feeding zone indicators did in the other systems. Let's go ahead, cover up bucket number 3, and bring bucket number 4 in for the feeding. So let's see here. All right, let's get 3 out of the way. Like I said, consistency is just one of those sort of things that you can kind of count on. So I count on it as a sort of a tool, which enables me to sort of predict or assume, have expectations of what is going to come up here in our check-in. So the fact that the feeding zone indicator survived, but the top covering newspaper didn't, could just be chalked up to, you know, the expected consistency after 12 days in 2 bins that are pretty equally built and managed. So here I don't think any of the corn cob bits that are in any of the other systems at this point were damaged by me, so they should still just be holding up, breaking down at their own pace. Here's the 3rd piece. So I believe it is just 3 pieces we have in each system, and just sort of, you know, sensing bigger clumps of material, and I guess in some cases I do have the opportunity to just twirl it around a bit and kind of break it apart and declump it. I don't think the worms mind the fact that it's clumpy, even though it seems dense and kind of compressed to me. I'm sure they have no issue getting through this stuff. It's just that when we start to feel how dense and compressed this stuff, maybe we sort of project our I guess just our ability to get through the stuff with our fingertips to the worm's ability to get through the stuff, but they do seem to be optimized for doing that. So I've got, let's see, we had some nice recyclable newspaper we could drop in here. And like we did before, we can grab a little handful of the stuff that's going to be laid out on the top surface before we drop in the yummy banana peel for them. And let's see, what else did we do? Here I am striving for consistency, but not really recalling exactly what I did 30 seconds ago. But I think we kind of came close. Oh, now I feel like I'm encountering corn cobs, trying to be gentle, don't want to mess them up. And once again, we're just going to position this little mound of lovely bedding material for the worms to come hang out in, just to make it even more cozy and inviting for them. Laying in some water, and then covering the whole shebang up so that the moisture can be somewhat contained within the system, not be lost to evaporation. But that's the one thing in these systems that really seems to work very well, is the the retention of moisture. I just somehow feel like just the depth of the systems contributes to that greatly. I'm not 100% sure if that's exactly the reason, but that's just my working theory. So on to bucket number 5, the last of the 3 systems that we need to get fed today. Alrighty. Once again, we got ourselves a little bit of kind of confetti over here. Actually, this thing almost seemed like it was still... Ooh, boy, what do we got here? Alright, well, I guess if it was a millipede, it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but this is a centipede. Centipedes do definitely attack, kill baby worms and stuff, so, oops, okay. Alright, whatever. I'm not going to go on a centipede hunt here. Although, you know, there's something about the look of that particular centipede. I thought I saw a video maybe on YouTube or something that I think was saying that that particular type of centipede is good to have around because they prey on other worse bugs or something. So, I don't know. Kind of a creepy looking critter. And whatever. I don't know what I would have done as far as... Usually I don't squash or whatever. I usually just grab and take outside if I possibly can. So, alright. I just bumped into a corn cob a moment ago. I know I did. Where did it go? Okay, so here's a piece. One chunk of corn cob. Is that another piece right there? Yep. Okay, we've got 2. I had this feeling that maybe each system had 3 pieces of corn cob, but the last one had 4. So from that point of view, I'm not 100% sure if we're consistent or if I've just been sort of failing to locate the 4th one on many occasions and many check-ins lately. But whatever, I found 3, so I'm going to treat that as having found them all. If we find a 4th one, then that shouldn't be too surprising either. But I think we've got ourselves a pretty good spot into which we can drop today's feeding. I mean, I don't even know why I'm going so out of my way to make this really deep hole, considering the fact that we've got a fairly puny feeding going in. But I kind of thought that the bedding boost, the generous amount of bedding that's going in with today's feeding out on the top surface, I thought that that might be sort of a nice substitute, you know, since these are night crawlers. Night crawlers do have a tendency to really enjoy nibbling on the paper products and those sorts of things that you usually use as bedding in your worm bins. So being generous with the night crawlers with the bedding is almost like giving them a little extra something to nibble on. Perhaps even a little something that they might even prefer more than the lovely kitchen scraps that you're feeding them. Alrighty. Now, I think we're almost there, and I think we were pretty consistent. I did notice that I forgot to sort of incorporate that piece of newspaper we took off the top surface in the beginning. In the other 2 bins, we just sort of blended it in, and it became sort of bedding that was just mixed in with all the material. Here, we just sort of incorporated into that top layer of stuff so that it'll probably get a good bit of traffic out here near the surface. The surface is popular because the moisture in the bin recirculates there beneath the plastic, and right below that is the yummy banana peel, which I hope they also enjoy. Alrighty, well, I think that's it now for our short but sweet check-in with the European night crawlers. The European night crawlers are 130 days in service today, and doing great. Can't complain. Oh, you know what? Almost forgot. Mr. Consistency keeps forgetting to do things in a consistent way. I think I'm okay. Somehow I do always, not always, but very often, manage to catch myself right before a complete failure. Alright, everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.